Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, Jess, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Rich Walsh will be joined by Chris Mueller over at the 93.7 The Fan Cam right now. Chris, how you doing? Big week at Steelers. I was there all day. Talked to all the guys on their press conference. No Aaron Rodgers. No news about Aaron Rodgers. But something's got to happen at some point. I do like the Mason Rudolph signing. It gives them a bit of an insurance policy because, look, I mean, I think he's good enough to get them 10 wins. But I also think maybe he stumbles and they only win 5 games, and that'll help them for the year after.
This might not be a popular opinion. People will say, well, then why did they sign DK Metcalf for that big deal after they traded for him? But I would just let Mason Rudolph be the starter this year. I don't think anybody would be laboring under some delusion that he could really show them enough to suddenly change their mind after all these years and become it would be like a Geno Smith late bloomer situation. 7-8 years after the guy comes into the league, suddenly he has this awakening. I don't think that's ever happening for Rudolph, but even if you won 9 games, I mean, you have all this draft capital. They're getting compensatory picks for the contracts some of these players have signed elsewhere in free agency, Rich. I think you just play out the string with Mason Rudolph for 1 year and then try to move up and get where you need to be in next year's draft to draft a player in what is perceived to be a stronger, deeper quarterback class. I don't know about you. I don't know about anybody listening and watching. The Aaron Rodgers circus is so tiresome, and I think we would all be willing to put up with hey, this guy loves being the center of attention. He loves these headlines. He's allegedly buying merchandise from a Pittsburgh area retailer. Oh, that must mean he's coming to the Steelers, except Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy who would do that just to generate some stories and clicks and what have you and keep his name out there. I don't want him around. He's not worth the hassle. If he was a good enough player, if he was the true 4-time MVP version of Aaron Rodgers that was somehow hitting free agency, all right, that's a different conversation, but he's not. He's just a dramatically reduced, almost completely immobile version, I think, of the player that was so great for so long, and I just don't have much of an appetite to deal with him coming here and eventually wearing black and gold.
No, I agree with you, and that's tonight's poll question, live poll question. Just scan the QR code. Who would you rather see as a starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph? I'm in the Mason Rudolph camp. Look, what he did those final 3 games in 2023 sold me. I was around the team. I was on the team playing. I was in the team locker room. You could see that the dynamic of the team changed when Kenny Pickett was basically benched and Mason Rudolph was in there. I'm not saying he's the greatest quarterback, but I think he can be a top 18 quarterback, a middle-of-the-road quarterback, and that's what the Steelers need right now. Maybe they can use that money up front on the defensive line somewhere else and do something else with it and build a team another way. And like you said, if they have a bad year, look, he wasn't on a good team this year. He was 1-4 as a starter. I don't know if all of it was his fault. They were a bad team. So I think he can get you to 10 wins. I think he's a good enough quarterback to do that.
I mean, I think 10 wins is his ceiling. I don't think he's the 18th best starting quarterback. I think that would be
top
like a
20.
Best case
That's
scenario.
what I was saying. Top 20, though.
No,
I mean,
I don't think he's even top 20. No, I think I can name 20 starting quarterbacks better than him. Just because he played for 3 games like a top 12 or so quarterback doesn't make him one for the balance of a season. But you know, his high end is he can probably give you about 7 or 8 games a season where he plays like a top 15 guy. He's probably going to give you about 4 or 5 games where he plays like a bottom 6 or so quarterback. And then the difference is what happens with those other 4 to 5 games. Does he play like a 20th best quarterback in the league? Then you're probably going to go 8-9, 9-8, 10-7. The point being for me here is that what I guess I want to make clear, I just don't think that they need to pay a quarterback big money. It's already been rumored that they maybe missed out on some of these defensive linemen that they might have been interested in because they've been earmarking money for Rodgers in free agency. It's just, that's such a bad idea. I know that there's this school of thought that, hey, how could you do this to Cam Hayward? How could you do this to TJ Watt to just have Mason be your quarterback this year? You're punting on any realistic chance of making a run in the playoffs. I got news for everybody. If you sign Aaron Rodgers for some 2-year deal that pays him $30 million a year, guess what? You still have no chance of going anywhere in the playoffs because he's not that guy anymore.
Yeah, I don't even know if this current version of Aaron Rodgers is better than Mason Rudolph at this point. He's 41. You don't know. You see these quarterbacks go downhill. Also, what I don't like and what frustrates me, this would be like us going out when we were single. You were dating a girl who was dating 3 other dudes, and then you're trying to figure out, you're waiting for her to pick you, right? Like that doesn't feel right. I don't want to wait around. I would just move on. So, like, if I'm the Steelers, I don't want to deal with that. The Giants, the Vikings, maybe potentially a retirement. I wouldn't want to deal with that. I don't like that. Okay, if you don't want us, then we don't need you. Let us move on.
Here's the more apropos one. You're in high school and you want to ask a girl to prom or to a homecoming dance, and she's like, well, 2 or 3 other guys have also asked me, and I'm just thinking about who I want to go with. It's almost like if you have any self-respect at that point, you're like, nah, you know what? I'll go find somebody else to go to the dance with. Like, yeah. I'm not going to wait around for you for 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, just the whole thing is an exercise in narcissism from a player whose best days are well behind him and who, at his best, I think, is maybe like the 13th or 14th best quarterback in the league and not number 1. I mean, that's the bottom line here is Aaron Rodgers, in terms of the hype and the attention he wants to receive and the way he wants to be treated, is wildly out of line with what Aaron Rodgers, the player, is anymore.
Yeah, and I think our audience is obviously on the side of us, right? Everyone, I think Steelers fans are getting frustrated over this. All right, we got to take a break. 412-575-2600 is the number. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our Xfinity Mobile tweet of the night, and this is from the Steelers. Welcome to the Berg. You're talking about Slay and DK Metcalf. They're right there. I think 2 good additions. Slay, maybe on the older side, but he was a good player, aggressive player. DK Metcalf, you know, what I'm hoping isn't this is a waste of $30 million for the Steelers for this first year if they can't get this quarterback situation straightened out. But I guess the upside of that, it's like paying $30 million to be able to move up in the draft and draft maybe 5th overall or something and then have a legit chance at getting a franchise quarterback.
I think you can, if you want to look hopefully at the Metcalf situation, say that if you believe this guy is going to be good for 3 to 4 more years, like at the top of his game good, then even if next year is sort of a lost year or just a year where they're punting, if they do draft a guy in 26 and hasten him into a starting role, then Metcalf's the kind of player, cheat code level athlete, who can make life easier for a new quarterback. I will say that if Mason Rudolph ends up being their quarterback, let's just, for argument's sake, say that's how this plays out, Rich. I mean, what's to say that a guy like Metcalf, who loves to run go balls still, wouldn't love having Mason Rudolph there? You protect him. I'll tell you one thing Mason Rudolph's happy to do. That's plant his feet and then take a big shot downfield. That's what the guy loves to throw. He threw a bunch of them to George Pickens. Why do you think a very mercurial, very hard-to-please wide receiver was basically on his best behavior for the last 3 games plus a playoff game last year? It's because Mason got him the ball down the field and often.
Yeah, I definitely think Mason Rudolph is definitely a better deep ball thrower right now than Aaron Rodgers. All right, back to the phone lines. We're going to go to Will and McKees Rocks. How you doing, Will?
Hey, Richie. Hey, Chris. How are you tonight?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I wanted to ask you a question about the quarterback thing right now. Omar Khan is usually so with things like the way he signed Metcalf and, you know, Slay and everything. But do you think he painted himself into a corner with the way he's handled this?
Look, that's a good question. Chris, I mean, do you think he misplayed things? I mean, I know people were frustrated last year about the quarterback situation, and then all of a sudden they got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I don't see a scenario like that this year, especially right now. You're not really trading for anyone. There's no one out there to trade for, and there's really no one left in free agency. And look, I'm not excited about Aaron Rodgers, and it sounds like you're not. I don't know who is. The guy's old. He's over the hill, and you see what happens to quarterbacks when they hit certain age.
I think that you might have a situation where if there's a 3-way brain trust that makes big decisions for the Steelers, and it's Art Rooney, and it's Mike Tomlin, and it's Omar Khan, I think there's a very good chance you might have 3 different opinions about who should be the starter this year based on who's left and who's on the roster. I think Art probably would bring back Russ if he had unilateral say and make him the starter again for whatever reason. I think Art liked him. I I think Mike, if he had his druthers, would want Aaron Rodgers. And I think that Omar, given the way things have played out to this point, Rich, would just say go with Mason and we'll have a bridge year. I do think one thing has become somewhat clear. So I do think that's the problem. You want to know why it's been so convoluted, been so confusing, et cetera. I think it's because they don't have maybe genuine agreement among those three parties. But here's the strange thing. We kept hearing that Justin Fields was really the guy they wanted to bring back. Art Rooney said, I want to bring back either one of the two guys we had playing last year. It seemed like they liked Fields a lot. If they really like Justin Fields a lot, and if Justin Fields is probably going to come in under what Aaron Rodgers is going to want, if that was your preferred choice and he's cheaper than the guy that's still out there that you're being connected to, why didn't you get that deal done if you really wanted him? Because you could just bump the number up slightly and say, okay, well, this is our preferred choice anyway. We'll pay him $24 million a year. Really, the stories coming out there about how much they did or didn't like Fields, what they were or were not willing to pay him, and what they might be willing to pay Rodgers are very contradictory in nature, I think, Rich.
Here's the other thing. I mean, if the Steelers wait it out, maybe they're smarter than all of us. If they wait it out and Russell Wilson goes to the Giants and the Giants sign Wilson, there's really no market for Rodgers, and you can pay him whatever you want if he wants to play again. Or he would just retire if $15 million isn't good enough.
I'm going to be honest with you. One thing I don't feel good saying right now or confident saying is that the Steelers are smarter than the rest of us because most of their moves haven't suggested as such.
All right, let's go out to Paul in Salzburg. How you doing, Paul?
Why didn't you get that deal done?
Paul, you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I wanted to commend you and Chris tonight. Everything you're saying is exactly correct about the defense and that. The one person I like to see the Steelers go out and trade for is this Joe Milton III from New England, the second-round quarterback.
Yeah, I know who you mean, Paul.
He was a sixth-rounder.
The former Tennessee quarterback. Paul, thanks for your call. But, that's still not an upgrade. There's no one, in my opinion, right now that would be above Mason Rudolph. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and I'm not saying Mason Rudolph is the guy and that's who I wanted, but there's no one out there. Who are you going to get? Trey Lance? Is he better? No. I don't know.
I'm really perplexed by the overabundance of love for Joe Milton. We have YouTube. We stream our show on YouTube, Rich, and I keep the YouTube window open just to see what people are saying there. The YouTube comments are just astonishingly in favor of Joe Milton being brought here. The guy can throw the ball farther than probably anybody in the NFL. He also can't hit the broadside of a barn. I do not really understand at all why people are obsessed with Joe Milton. I mean, he's like an even less refined and less polished by a lot Josh Allen. Josh Allen came out from Wyoming. He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn either. Joe Milton's even less accurate than that. I think Steelers fans, if they actually got their wish there, would find themselves very quickly to be very angry with Joe Milton.
All right, Brian out in Squirrel Hill. How you doing, Brian? Brian, you there?
He was a Joe Milton caller. I scared him off.
Go ahead, Brian.
Good evening, gentlemen. My question is, why would Mason Rudolph want to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers after the coaching staff, the owners, and the locker room atmosphere proved wrong against him?
Yeah, Brian, look, I think you're a little misguided on this one. I appreciate the call. The players were 100% behind him, and I know that is a fact back in 23. Okay, maybe they didn't lead him the right direction or tell him the complete truth, but look, honestly, if you're Mason Rudolph, you go where you ever think is the best fit and maybe the most money, but the best fit. He knows the offense. He knows the personnel.
Wait, why does he know the offense?
Well,
he didn't play for Arthur Smith.
I get what you're saying, but but it's still under Tomlin. He knows the coaching staff. He feels more comfortable. He knows most of the personnel and the players. I think this is a good fit. I think that's why he picked the Steelers, because he knows there's a chance that he could be a starter here. I'm sure they told him that. I mean, it's not a guarantee that they sign Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, they signed him, 2 years, something like $8 million. There's a decent chance he actually collects all $8 million of that. That's probably why he wanted to come back here, or he was willing to come back here. The other reason besides money is I suspect the owner got involved personally more than he would otherwise in this one and made it very clear to the player, I want you back. I think maybe you were done wrong here. I suspect Art Rooney, even though he and Mike Tomlin are usually in lockstep, if you gave Art truth serum, he'd feel like Mike didn't give Mason a fair shake after he got his team to the playoffs, and that maybe if Art had had his way unilaterally, Mason would have been brought back this season.
Jerry in Franklin, how you doing,
past
Jerry?
Season.
Jerry.
Thanks for letting me on.
Yep.
I started watching the Steelers back in '68. I was 13 years old, and every decade or so, the 70s, the 80s, and you get different players that you kind of fall in love with and are your favorites. And in the 80s, two of my favorites were Tunchilkin and Craig Wolfley, and I always thought that they both represented the Steelers well. Mm-hmm. They both loved Jesus, and even though they're gone from us, what we feel is prematurely, I just hope and pray they're having a blast in heaven.
Yeah, both guys are great. I knew both guys really well. I mean, it was a surprise to the news that I woke up to on Monday. Sad, actually. Craig Wolfley was a good guy. He will be surely missed for sure, Chris. And I know you guys
very
are probably,
gregarious,
yeah,
very unique when you'd hear him calling a game. You'd hear Wolfisms that I think you would never hear anywhere else.
Yeah.
Which was part of the charm with Wolf, and very exuberant, which is what you want. You don't want two staid people calling a game. You want people who sound like they want to be there.
Great personality. I'm going to miss traveling with him. I traveled with him to every Steeler game, sat right by him. He always had a great story to tell. Just so sad, 66 years old. All right, we got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes.